This is a lesson on comparing and ordering fractions, which is the same thing. To compare them is to put them in order. You can use different charts and things, but I usually don't have those with me when I want to know. So I just make it easier. There are two things I do that helps me to put fractions in order. One is to think of them as benchmarks, and we'll practice that first. And then the easiest way for me to compare fractions is to cross multiply, which I'll teach in a second. So a benchmark fraction is a well-known count or measure that can serve as a reference point when estimating. So the book was going to have you practice, are the numbers closer to 0, 1/2, or 1? So if I had like 3/4 and I had like 1/8 and I was trying to compare them, 1/8 would be closest to 0. Closest to 0. 3/4 would be closest to 1. So I often count that as empty. 1/8 is almost empty. There's only 1 out of 8 pieces. And 3/4 is almost full. So it would be bigger. So let's think of another one. Sometimes when I'm thinking of half too, I have to look at the bottom number. So like an example of half might be 8/16. 8 is half of 16. 2/4. 2 is half of 4. If I'm doing one where I have 18ths and I have like half of it, it'd be 9. So if I'm comparing something like 4/16, I think of 8/16 as half. So that would be an 8 here over 16 to compare it to halves, because I'm thinking of 16ths. So if I was comparing 9/16 and 12/18, first I decide where they compare over to these numbers. Half of 18 would be 9, so this is more than half. And this is just more than half. Where half of 18 would be 9. This is way more than half, so this one would be bigger. So sometimes that works for me to think, is it closer to 0, 1/2, or 1? It's called benchmark fractions. And then I cross multiply. Cross multiply just means take arrows from the bottom to the opposite fraction. It has to point up. It works pointing up, so that's a cross. It's called a cross multiply. 5 times 3 is 15. I write it above there. I'm multiplying in the arrow of the order. 7 times 2 is 14. And it works for every fraction. This one's bigger. 3/7 is bigger than 2/5 because of cross multiplying. Let's do another one of those. Let's do 3/5 and 2/3. Arrows making a cross pointing up, making a cross pointing up. Follow that when you multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. Write it above. 5 times 2 is 10. So 6 is smaller than 10. So 3/5 is smaller than 2/3. It works for every fraction. Let's do an example of an equal one. x pointing up, weird x, cross multiply. 8 times 1 is 8, write it above there. 2 times 4 is 8. These are equal because they're the same number. Let's try just a couple more of those. To put in order means to sequence. Like if you sequence a story, you put it in order. If you sequence fractions, you put them in order. So we're going to see greater than or less than fits in here. Cross, cross, arrows pointing up. Follow and multiply. 8 times 4 is 32. 9 times 5 is 45. So this one is 5/8 is bigger than 4/9 because 45 is bigger than 32.